This podcast is brought to you by Spotify for podcasters. Have you yourself ever wanted to become a podcaster? Well, Spotify makes it simple and easy to do so. You can record, edit, and even distribute your podcast straight from their app. The best part? It is absolutely 100% free. Visit their website, podcasters.spotify.com, for more details, and download the app on your Apple or Android devices today to get started on your podcasting adventure. That's Spotify for podcasters. What is going on, everybody? Travis Fowler Harkrider is back at you again with another edition of the Four Corner Podcast, and we're not going to waste any time. Let's talk pro wrestling, because it's my favorite thing to talk about, and there was a lot of good that went on this past week, and unfortunately there are some downs that we're going to get to here in just a little bit. But first, let's go with the positives. First, the return of TNA. I talked about it last week with their Hard to Kill having some hype behind it and potential to live up to, and it certainly did that. I watched the rest of the pay-per-view, as I was mentioning that I had only watched a little bit of it when I did last week's episode, but after watching the rest of the pay-per-view and the follow-up first episode of the returning TNA Impact, TNA is in great shape, and some even think, myself included, that at least creative, not financially speaking, TNA could become the number 2 promotion again stateside if they play their cards right throughout 2024. But we saw the debut of Nick Nemeth over in TNA, which I did not see coming. We had only seen him in New Japan just a little bit ago, but to see him come over as one of the new signings potentially, I know nothing's formally been announced, but they've got him in a big spot already with TNA, so this could be the start of the Nick Nemeth run over in TNA, which would be a great shot in the arm, relaunching under those 3 initials. Also, the Josh Alexander Hammerstone match lived up to what I was hoping for. It was a lot of fun. And then the follow-up from Alexander, the Will Ospreay rematch from TNA's Impact this past week, was absolutely amazing, phenomenal, and a great way to start off a return to form for TNA. If you haven't checked it out yet, do yourself a favor, seek it out and watch it. I really have a lot of good feelings for TNA going forward in 2024. Scott D'Amore has done so well with that promotion since becoming lead booker, and honestly, I think sky could be the limit for TNA this year. Unfortunately, they're losing Trinity, and there's been plenty of rumors of her coming back to WWE probably as soon as the Royal Rumble this upcoming weekend. We'll get into some of that here in just a little bit. But yeah, if you haven't done so, do yourself a favor and check out TNA. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So let's go ahead and talk about the Royal Rumble, since it is coming up this weekend. And man, there is a lot that could go on in the Rumble between now and Saturday, but man, all of it's intriguing. Just even in the women's Rumble match itself, we could have the re-debut of Naomi coming back to WWE, as there's been rumors that that's been in the works for a while. There is always the rumor going about that one Mercedes Moné, formerly known as Sasha Banks, may be making her return to the company, and it could happen at the Rumble. There'd be no better way to do so than as a surprise entrant. So all of that taken into account there. And then on the men's side as well, you could see some surprise returns, maybe from one Andrade, who just recently wrapped up his AEW run. Plus, they always seem to have at least a little bit of surprises throughout the Rumble, but this is one of the first years that I don't think think we have to worry about too many surprises, nor do I think we might get very many, because we have such a star-studded roster. Arguably, this may be the best Royal Rumble we'll end up having. Some argue that 2001 is the greatest, others say 92. I honestly would have to go back to watch both and tell you which one I think of the two was the more entertaining and better Rumble. Of course, one was the WWE title win with Ric Flair. The other was the Stone Cold win that led to the greatest WrestleMania of all time with him and The Rock at X7. So both Rumbles have a very lasting legacy, and this weekend's edition, you're going to have to put in some work, but not too hard, because I think there is that potential that it could be the best Rumble we see. You have main event names, which this is unheard of that WWE has so many main event players on their face side. I mean, good Lord, think about it. You've got guys like Cody Rhodes who have declared for it. The returning CM Punk has declared his entry for it. Jey Uso, I'm pretty confident to say, is going to be in it. Drew McIntyre, who is kind of doing a face heel thing right now. They've kind of kept him in the middle, so he's still doing some of his face antics. So I'm going to call him and put him in that category for now. You could even have, in my opinion, the biggest face of them all that could show up and win the whole thing. R-Truth, Judgment Day's own, could end up walking out as the Royal Rumble winner. I know that's probably not likely, but Truth has been nothing but short of entertaining this past run since he's come back from his surgery, which he talked about this past week as he nearly had his leg amputated from this injury and complications of an infection. So great to know that he didn't have to go through with that, and it's awesome that he's been back on TV. The work he's been doing with Judgment Day recently has been nothing short of hysterical, and I look forward to seeing what this Rumble produces coming up this weekend. And speaking of some shocking news, though, we've got a lot to talk about in regards to that. One has to do with an injury, which we'll get to in a little bit. But shocking news was the word of the day on Friday, because it was formally announced that New Japan's own Kazuchika Okada's contract is officially expiring at the end of January, and he is leaving New Japan. There's already been talks. Where is he going to go? There's only two companies that apparently have his interest and that are viable candidates financially for him, because this is a wrestling business at the end of the day, and he does need to make the correct financial move for himself. That, of course, WWE or AEW. Either one of them actually presents a lot of good prospects and some stuff I would be interested in seeing. But if I'm being completely honest, there's plenty that he's kind of already done with a good amount of the roster over on the AEW side. You know, I know Kenny Omega's out indefinitely right now, but we know what he's done in forms of classic matches at Wrestle Kingdoms with him. Will Ospreay, who just recently signed with AEW while he was under New Japan contract nonetheless. We know he'll start with AEW full-time in February. We know that he's had a great feud with Bryan Danielson. I've watched both matches and wouldn't mind seeing a third. And there's always the prospects of Jon Moxley and a feud with him. You could always revisit him and Jay White. There's a lot out there over on the AEW front. I mean, Samoa Joe could be a fun match. Joe and Okada. But over on the WWE side, you've got his best friend, Shinsuke Nakamura, who's had a bit of a rejuvenation over the last couple months. The Io Sky title run has reportedly been a way to show Okada that WWE would handle him creatively well, as both Shawn Michaels and Triple H want him in the company and have actively been pursuing him. So there's a lot that he has to think about between the two companies. You've also got a lot of fresh faces over there for Okada to face as opponents. Him and Rollins could be a great matchup. You could have good matches with him and Finn Balor again. They've got their New Japan history. I mean, there's just so much opportunity for this guy, and he's so good. Some argue that he's the greatest of this generation. So really, it just comes down to what he wants and what he thinks will fit him best. As a fan, I think I would rather see him go over to the WWE side just to see what they do with him. Some would disagree with that and think he would flourish better off in AEW, and they may be right. But I don't know. There's something about the prospect of Okada in WWE that just hits my intrigue more than him going to AEW. But we may not have to wait too long to find out. Who knows? Like I mentioned earlier, Ospreay signed his contract for AEW while he still was committed to New Japan. Who's to say something might have been worked out where we may even see a surprise Rumble appearance from Okada? How crazy would that be? We know that the working relationship with WWE and All Japan Pro Wrestling was actually put together by a New Japan alum, and that's been their way of trying to do more joint ventureships or partnerships to kind of just feel the waters out. And this is new territory for WWE. We haven't really seen much of this, honestly, since the 80s. You could even argue the 90s with ECW. It's very interesting to see where this might end up. There are some reports stating that they are actively seeking a potential partnership even with New Japan. How crazy would that be if that were to come to fruition as well? I don't know. There's so many questions that are coming into 2024, and honestly, I'm stoked. As a wrestling fan, like I said last week, and I think many would agree that this is one of the hottest, if not the hottest time to be a wrestling fan since the 90s. So this is just rejuvenating my love for wrestling even more. So I am excited for the Rumble. I'm excited to see what happens with Okada. And while I'm kind of thinking of it, there's another guy who actually is leaving New Japan. He has already gone on record as stating it. One Tama Tonga, who has been a favorite of mine in his New Japan days and also is a Bullet Club founder. Could he make his way to WWE? There's been talks in the past of him working with WWE. We know that his brother Camacho, now of course over in New Japan, he's Tonga Loa. But we know that there's a family history there. So who's to say you can't wrap him up in a bloodline story, for instance? I don't know. I think it would be really cool to see Tama Tonga in WWE. Maybe he can make a surprise Rumble appearance. I think his contract is officially up. So who knows? We might see the good bad guy show up in WWE one day. Not to mention his brothers are some good brothers. Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson are over there. AJ Styles is there as well. So there's a lot of prospects for him too. I don't know. I just really would like to see it. I'm not going to lie. I'd love to see Tama Tonga show up in a WWE ring one time. While I'm thinking about it though, we know that there's trios titles everywhere, right? Okay, I won't say everywhere because I don't know that for a fact. But we know that at least with Ring of Honor and AEW, the brands have their 6-man tag titles or trios titles depending on which brand you go with. I was thinking about this actually because this past Monday, the Imperium New Day situation has become very interesting to the point where some have speculated that maybe this is setting up for a Big E return, but as it was pointed out, Big E still has no timetable for his return. But right now, Xavier Woods is the only one who seems to still be active and not injured, and he's fighting Imperium right now. We've seen them do their thing over the last couple weeks, and maybe this is setting up for a potential return of Kofi Kingston, and we know that WWE and AEW for that matter have been able to keep secrets to themselves pretty good over the last couple years. Who's to say this isn't setting up for a Big E surprise return and a feud with Imperium and New Day? And the reason I bring this up is because I started thinking there's a lot of 3-man teams over in WWE right now. Who's to say that we couldn't see a trios title show up in WWE relatively soon? Because think about it. You've got the New Day, potentially. You've got Imperium. You've got the Alpha Academy over on Raw. You've got Judgment Day over there as well. And even if you lose one male member, I think you kind of understand where I'm going with that, assumption, if you want to call it that. You still have 3 people you could work with there. And then over on SmackDown, you've got AJ Styles and the Good Brothers, the OC. You've got the newly formed Final Testament with Karrion Kross and AOP. You've got the not formally introduced yet as such, but the Bobby Lashley Street Profits team, which has been rumored to be called the Pride. You've also got the LWO, and now the formally recognized, officially, the new Legado del Fantasma with Santos Escobar, Angel Garza, and Humberto Carrillo. I don't know. I feel like there's an opportunity if WWE wanted to capitalize on it. They could do their own trios titles right now if they wanted to. They've got enough teams that I think could sustain a trios title. However, it would have to be one of those titles that's shared between both brands, similar to what the women's tag titles are. And unfortunately, we know how the women's tag titles have been treated. And I hate saying that it hasn't been very good, but it hasn't been very good. So I think it could be safe to say that we may not see it ever in WWE. It's just kind of fun to think about, though. I think it'd be kind of cool to see a set of trios titles in WWE. Now, let's go ahead and talk about one more positive thing to take place before we get into the Debbie Downers. We have seen social media posts all week from both Charlotte and Ric Flair and even Andrade have all stated that Charlotte Flair's recovery time might actually be shorter than what we think. Could it be a WrestleMania comeback in time? I don't know. It's very up in the air, but she apparently has been making rapid progress with her recovery. She's posted videos on her own social media of her rehab going quite well and apparently is been going ahead of schedule. So there's a lot of talk. Will Charlotte make it back in time for WrestleMania? It's very possible. She is a natural-born athlete, and she's a Flair after all. So who's to say that she couldn't pull the rabbit out of her hat, or maybe pull a John Cena in this case, and make a comeback before Mania? It'd be kind of fun, and honestly, I think it would be disappointing if Flair isn't on the WrestleMania card because of it being WrestleMania 40. It's a huge WrestleMania that has a lot of implications and has the potential to be the biggest and best WrestleMania since 17. And that says a lot. Now, that comes to the bad news, though. There's 2 injury reports that came out this past week. One was greater than the other, but not to downplay anybody's injury, I will bring up, though, that Miss Cora Jade, who just came back from an injury, unfortunately suffered an ACL tear, and that is now going to keep her out for 6 to 9 months. So myself here from the 4CP wish Cora Jade a speedy recovery, as I have enjoyed her character work and development in NXT, and it's very disappointing to have her just come back and unfortunately have to get sidelined again with another injury. So hope to see you back sooner rather than later, Cora Jade. But of course, the biggest news that came out of Friday outside of the Okada New Japan situation was that one of Seth Rollins and the confirmation of his injury. He has suffered a torn meniscus and a torn MCL, which sounds bad. However, there is a potential good light that could be shined on this. If, and this is where Dr. Google came in great handy because I myself needed to know what we might be looking at here. If it indeed is a torn MCL that is just of a grade 1 or 2, it does not require surgery. Same on the meniscus front if it's torn on the outer third of the meniscus ligament. He wouldn't need surgery to repair that either. However, if it is a grade 3, or if on the meniscus front, if it's a tear in the inner 2/3, then we will be looking at surgery for Mr. Rollins. And the recovery time, at least on the MCL front, if it is indeed a grade 3, is a minimum of a 6-month recovery, which puts him out of Mania. And I know that would be disappointing, at least for myself as a fan, as well as many others, because it had pretty much been all confirmed that they were going to go for Punk and Rollins at Mania. But there is a way that you could still work with this, even if it's not as severe as the grade 3 or the inner torn meniscus, and you just want to give him some time off. There is a way you can work with this. What if, tomorrow on Raw, as he is starting the show, he comes out and tells us his injury status and said he has to go away for a while. Not where he has to have surgery, but it gives him time to recuperate properly and recover without having to beat on his body for too long. You could always have him vacate the title, and let's pull a Royal Rumble 92-16 again, like somebody that follows our channel actually put as a comment when I talked about, hey, what would you want to talk about this past week? He had a great idea, and I honestly think it could work. You put the World Heavyweight title on the line in the Royal Rumble match, immediately it gets more eyes on the Rumble for one of the top prizes. Honestly, you could argue Rollins has done a great job of bringing prestige to that title in just a short amount of time. And if Punk were to win it, he wins the world title. So now he's already a main event slot. So let's say you bring Rollins back and he can now use the argument against Punk. Hey, you didn't beat me. I had to vacate that title. So now you're right back to the match that people want to see. And you've given your guy ample amount of time to recover with some time off. And we still get Punk and Rollins. It's always a possibility, and it may be the route that we end up seeing come to fruition. We will know more by the start of Monday Night Raw this evening. And we will know definitely more of what is going to be shaped up for WrestleMania season after the Royal Rumble. I cannot wait. It is one of my favorite events every year, and I can honestly say that if you're a wrestling fan overall, I think the Royal Rumble is one of your favorite events every single year. This year is no exception. So, with that said, we have come to the end of this week's episode. What would you like to see at the Royal Rumble this week? Would you like to see a world title Royal Rumble match? Who would you like to see show up in the Rumble? Sound off in those comments down below. Also, if you like what you hear and you support the channel, the easiest way to show that support is to subscribe and make sure you like and share our videos around. Make sure you're following us on the social medias as well. Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram, as I'm active on all three of those. We put out statuses on our Facebook page so often, asking what you want to talk about. Let me know. Sound off there. Also, you can follow me personally over on X at Travis_4CP. I love talking wrestling any time of the day or week, so please hit me up at any time. Who knows? I may even want to do a live watch along for the Royal Rumble this upcoming Saturday. Let me know if that's something you would be interested in watching in those comments down below. But definitely until next weekend, you guys take care. And as always, continue to love pro wrestling.